Now, as you all know, we also do medical astrology at the Oraculos School of Astrology, and I can't help but see certain combinations and think certain things. So when I see a person with the Sun Jupiter, one of the things that already comes to mind is that this could be a person who is tending towards eating food that is richer, that is heavier, that is oilier. And when a person has Sun Jupiter within their chart, that could say that that is something that they've inherited from their father's side of the family. This tendency towards eating food that is richer, that is heavier, that is oilier. The saving grace within this is that she has the Mars rising and the Mars in Virgo rising, because Mars in Virgo in general tends to speed up a person's metabolism, and it tends to cause a person to have a faster metabolism, and therefore some of the backlash of eating heavier, richer, greasier, oilier food doesn't necessarily manifest within their system, because they have a metabolism and they have an internal fire that has the ability to move that food along quickly, is one of the things that we can say about this with the Mars rising. But in general, Sun Jupiter says that if we were to say anything to her from a health perspective, we would say, hey, make sure that you pay attention to your consumption, make sure that you put a limit to some of the richer, oilier foods that you're eating. Make sure that you really watch your diet to a very large degree, because very often Sun Jupiter can say that the sins of my father, but also the dietary style of my father can become my own dietary style, and I can end up with some of the same lifestyle-based health issues that he may have ended up with, is one thing with the Sun Jupiter. Sun Venus could be an indication that the native has a very strong sweet tooth. And so this is something where we would say to her, also be mindful about the type of sugar that you consume, because Venus Sun is indicating that there's a part of my body that just enjoys the consumption of sweets and sugar, and it's something that really turns me on, and it's something that I probably find myself not being able to live without, because I love how sweets tie into my desire for the sweeter side of life in general. And then we see that she also has the Venus in a square relationship with the Jupiter, and Venus square Jupiter is also another piece that points towards sweets as being a potential high point within this native's life. Venus represents sweet things, Jupiter represents a lot. Therefore, Venus-Jupiter can indicate a lot of sweet things being a very big part of how this woman just enjoys being alive in general. And we would also want to say to her with that, to be mindful once again of the consumption of those sweets, just because this is the sort of setup within this chart that could be speaking towards sugar-based health issues that she once again may have inherited from the father's side of the family. So these are things that we're just seeing in terms of these planets that have been in aspect with the sun. Now, we also see that she has the sun in a sextile relationship with Mars. So I could talk about Sun sextile Mars, or I could talk about Mars rising by itself, and it doesn't matter because we still have to talk about the Mars. So what does it mean when a person has the Mars rising? This says that the native can be action-oriented, independent, someone who's going places, someone who's pushing for the front of the line. Having Mars rising can oftentimes cause a person to be quite competitive because they challenge themselves to be the best version of themselves possible. So it's saying that she has a lot of get up and go and a lot of stamina and a lot of energy to get the job done. These are just things that we see when a person has Mars rising. There is a sense of a can-do nature and a can-do spirit when we see this, because they don't like to be held back at all. Now, another side of the Mars rising, kind of like being a solar person, is that when we're a solar person, we burn ourselves out. When we have Mars rising, we also burn ourselves out. So this could be another thing that is saying that the native tends towards burnout within this lifetime, and this is something that she should really try to pull back from or slow down from, because this tendency is represented not only by her being Solarian, but also by her having Mars rising. Now, another thing the ancients have said to us about Mars rising is that when a person has Mars in the first house, it can oftentimes denote that that person has a scar within their face. Not a scar on their head, but a scar within their face. And the closer to the first house cusp that Mars is, the closer to the hairline it is, and the further from the first house cusp it is, the closer to the chin it is. So based on the positioning of this Mars, we might presume that between her nose and her chin and not so much the chin, but higher up. So between the nose and the bottom lip. And this is just me making a raw estimation. There could be a scar on the native's face. This can also say that when the native tends toward being unwell, she may tend towards having a lot of inflammation within her body in general, or even pain within her body in general, because Mars is governing both inflammation and pain. So that's all we have to say now about the ruler of the ascendant, which is where we started. Then the planets in aspect to the ruler of the ascendant, which is what we just did. 1, 2, 3. And now we can go on and speaking about the house location of the ruler of the ascendant. Now, truthfully, this house location piece, for me, usually comes before the aspects to the rule of the ascendant. And the reason for that is because we know that determination by location is immediate. Determination by location is immediate. What that means is that we have to first interpret where that planet is before we interpret the things that are happening to that planet. So, technically, I should have spoken about the sun being in the third house, because when you have the ruler of your ascendant in any house within your chart, that's representing a place within your life in which you are very deeply psychically focused. So she has the rule of the ascendant in the third house. This is something that we oftentimes see within the charts of school teachers. Period. It's something we oftentimes see within the charts of school teachers, particularly teachers who are teaching in earlier life education. So that could be anywhere from kindergarten to primary school, but this is something that we tend to see within the charts of school teachers. This is also something that we see within the charts of people who have a very deep and intimate connection or relationship with their siblings, because the third house is representing, or it is the house of siblings. So this could be an indication that the native also had a very close and tight-knit relationship with her siblings as well. Now, we'll see whether or not that relationship was for better or worse, but in general, these are some of the primary indications of having the rule of the ascendant in the third house. I like to learn and I like to share with people in my immediate community. And one of the ways in which I share with those people in my immediate community is by giving back through teaching in a school, is one of the things that we can see with that. Another thing could be I like to share and I like to work within a capacity in which I'm teaching or sharing or communicating, because all of these things make me feel more robust about myself in general. And then the final part of this is that my siblings and I, we share a very deep story that connects us even to this day. And I have a very close and deep relationship with those siblings in general. So all of this is what we would say about the sun being in the third house. So we have spoken about the ruler of the ascendant, the house location of the ruler of the ascendant, and the aspects to the ruler of the ascendant. These are the first things that we've done in looking at this. The next things that we would do as far as the ascendant is concerned is to speak about planets in the first house, in house 1, which we've done. But then the final thing is going to be the aspects to the first house cusp. Now, I see that she has the Neptune in a square relationship to the first house cusp. This is something that I particularly do not like, because whenever we have Neptune in a square relationship to the first house cusp, more often than not, it tends to indicate that this is a person who may have been bullied by her family. And by bullied by her family, this doesn't just mean you were bullied by your siblings. This can also mean you were also bullied by your parents. And so when we have Neptune square the ascendant, it can indicate that the native may have been bullied by her parents. And as a result of that, it could have led to a very deep sense of a lack of pure self-knowing. Now, this is something that we should pay attention to as astrologers, because oftentimes we get very caught up on, I'm going to interpret the ruler of the ascendant, and that's the sun, and therefore I'm going to stick with that. But very often, if there are problems in our fourth house, and those problems in our fourth house cut us down at our knees, it doesn't matter what type of sun person you are, you still will not be able to access that solar understanding of yourself because your life circumstances haven't actually given you the opportunity to be great. So when we have Neptune conjunct the fourth house cusp, this is one of the most destabilizing things that we can find in the entire astrological kingdom, because the Neptune conjunct the fourth house cusp says that the native does not come from a family unit that has the ability or that had the ability to support the establishment of a robust sense of self. And as a result of not coming from a family unit that has the ability to support the establishment of a robust sense of self, the native may have found herself feeling a sense of discouragement in terms of the story of her family, a sense of unease, a sense of instability, a sense of uncertainty. And this uncertainty in the family unit may have been something that was a deeply established part of her life for and throughout the entirety of her childhood. And this, so strong as it is, may have baked itself so deeply into her own identity that me describing her as a solar person at the beginning of this reading may not even register as being real for her, not because she doesn't have the capacity or the ability in this lifetime to access those things, but because she did not come from a container that had the ability to foster those things. And as a result of that, in the absence of that confidence, she may have been left with a deep sense of internal either self-deprecation or a deep sense of internal lack of belonging or a deep sense of internal just not feeling good about herself or about her placement in the world at large, because the family circle didn't really provide an environment that allowed for the fostering of a sense of genuine peace and stability and security, essentially, is one of the things we find when Neptune is conjunct the fourth house cusp. Another thing that we find when Neptune is conjunct the fourth house cusp is that our family doesn't have the ability to see us clearly. They only see us through everything they project onto us, which has nothing to do with our internal sense of our own values or the things that we find valuable. And so heavy are the projections of the family onto this person that even when she makes distinct strives within her life to be something different, the family can only continue to see her as the same little girl that they've always seen her as, because that is how they understand her presence and her placement within this world, regardless of what she is doing for her own self-improvement and her own self-betterment, is one of the things that we can say with Neptune conjunct the fourth house cusp. Now, the other side of Neptune conjunct the fourth house cusp is that sometimes this can indicate that there may have been a streak of alcoholism within the family home, and this alcoholism might be a part of the native's larger ancestral gifts or a part of her larger ancestral inheritance that she may have picked up from the family as well. All of these things, whether it manifests overtly as alcoholism, or whether it manifests as the family bullying the native, or whether it manifests as a general sense of a lack of safety or a lack of feeling stable and secure within the home, all of these things can set a person up to have very real complexes within their life that don't allow them to foster the greatest or the strongest sense of their own self-identity within the world. So this is one aspect that we find the Ascendant. The other aspect that we find the Ascendant that is of value to me, and fine, we could talk about the Mercury. Mercury square the Ascendant from the fourth house could say that her household and home was also a place in which there was a lot of learning and communication and chatter and all of these things. So she might have come from a very communicative, talkative family circle. This isn't a bad thing at all. We like that about Mercury in the fourth house. Mercury conjunct the Neptune in the fourth house, however, could say that she could have come from a family that was founded upon a very specific series of mistruths or a very specific series of lies, and those lies might have been what characterized the shape of the family home in general. Now, it's 11:11, make a wish. Great. Now, the next quote-unquote aspect that we see here is and it's not a quote-unquote, well, it is a quote-unquote, because we have Saturn in the quincunx with the Ascendant. When a person has Saturn quincunx the Ascendant, it's pretty much the same as having Saturn conjunct the Ascendant. And none of what I'm saying is supportive of the Solarian nature that we spoke about earlier. Saturn quincunx the Ascendant could be an indication that the native comes into a world that feels heavy and that feels harsh and that feels burdensome and that forces her to grow up at a very young age and that throws a great deal of responsibilities on her shoulders at a very young age. And those responsibilities might also be the responsibility of taking care of her siblings, because we remember that we saw the rule of the Ascendant in the third house, and that could indicate that one of the responsibilities that she has in this lifetime is the responsibility of being the caretaker of those siblings within her life as well. So all of these things could be manifesting, and they could fundamentally ruin or sully or take away from a very foundational sense of just joy growing up in general. And that lack of joy could be responsible for a number of other manifestations of feeling depressed, feeling burdened, feeling discouraged, or tending towards feeling down in general. So we're very hopeful about this Sun-Jupiter aspect that she has as being something to buoy her or lift her out of that funk, because there is a tendency of taking the burdens of the world on her shoulders, and that could be something that is preventing her, once again, from tapping into the joyful, exuberant nature of the Sun or the Mars rising or the Sun in the square relationship with Jupiter, because when Saturn throws a wet towel over you, it really throws a wet towel over you, and it can make you feel as if you're not able to access joy and pleasure and excitement in the same way as other people around you, because the life that you've had has been so marked by responsibility or by burden that you haven't actually been able to tap into that additional feeling of what is joyful in a genuine sense. Now, that is all of the relationships to the first house cusp, and that is where we end our treatment of speaking about the Ascendant via speaking about the native as far as her soul and psyche is concerned. That took a while, and a part of why it takes a while is because we need to first understand who a person is before we can understand what's going on within the various parts of their lives. So now that we've established that, everything else is relatively easy. For example, the rule of the second house is going to represent her money within this lifetime. When we're talking about all of the other houses, with the exception of the first house, we start by assessing the planets in that house first. So I see she has Pluto within the second house, and she also has Uranus within the second house. These are symbols of financial instability. And the reason why we say financial instability is because Pluto is a god that represents wealth. We all know this. Pluto represents a massive amount of wealth, because Pluto was in charge of all of the wealth that existed within the underworld. So Pluto represents wealth. But Pluto also represents a force of destiny that is so great that it stands in your way and it does not budge and it does not move. And it can stand in your way so severely that you know within your heart of hearts that the reason why you're not being allowed to move forward is because of there being some divine mandate against your moving forward. And so when we have Pluto within the second house, within a chart that already is denoting a level of financial difficulty, the Pluto in the second house could say that it seems as if the very universe is against the prospect of me being rich. Or it seems as if the very universe is against the prospect of me having a sense of financial stability that feels stable and sure and true and everlasting within this lifetime. So that's our understanding of the Pluto in the second house. Now, the Uranus in the second house is something that we sometimes see within the charts of people who make a lot of money and then lose a lot of money. Or it can be in something that we see within the charts of people who are working in the technological industry. One of the richest men in the world, who I gave a reading to once, has the Uranus in the second house. And at the same time, he said to me, "But Michael, you know I came from nothing, right?" And so when we have Uranus in the second house, it can do two things. One, it can set up a seed of financial instability within our lives in general, where it becomes difficult for us to actually stabilize what feels certain and true and sure about ourselves from a financial perspective. So we might always find ourselves in a state of financial turbulence. But the second thing is it can also give us a sense of a non-attachment when it comes to money, because we know that money is something that is here today and gone today in any event. So it causes us to not necessarily be moved by money in the same way that other people would be moved by money, because we realize that money is a thing that is just fundamentally unstable. So people can't buy us and people can't sell us because we can't be bought or sold, because the monetary piece wasn't really that important to us in the first place. So that's another thing that we find with the Uranus in the second. Now, there is a 10% chance that Uranus-Pluto could represent that she makes a groundbreaking amount of money from the technological industry. But that's not necessarily where my spirit is feeling guided to interpret this. But Uranus-Pluto could indicate making a groundbreaking amount of money from the technological industry or from e-commerce or something like Bitcoin or something to that effect. So that is our Uranus and Pluto combination in the second house. Now we go and take a look at the ruler of the second house. The planets that are in a house will always tell us what is going to go on or what our experience of that house is going to be like in the first epoch of our lives, the first period of our lives. Some people say, well, how long is a period? A period can be the first 30 years of your life, for example. We manifest the planets that are in the houses. And then the next period of our lives, we grow into the ruler of that house. So here we see the Mercury at 28 degrees of Scorpio, 20 minutes, and terrestrially located within the fourth house. So now we're going to talk about this Mercury as being the ruler of her money. Mercury in the fourth house could say that this is a woman who gets a lot of money from real estate, and she probably spends a lot of money on real estate. Real estate might be a very big part of her financial earning, but also part of her financial spending. The fact that it's in the fourth house could also say that her financial story within this lifetime is deeply interwoven with the finances of her family. Even as an adult, her financial story within this lifetime might still be deeply interwoven with the finances of her parents, for example, because of the Mercury's location within the fourth house. Now, a part of what's making us know that there could be a very real sense of financial loss that she is experiencing through real estate, or a sense of loss that she's experiencing through her family, is the fact that this Mercury is also in a conjunction with the Neptune. When we have the ruler of our house of money conjunct Neptune, which is representing one of the toilet bowls within this lifetime, it can represent that our money is completely being flushed down the gurgler. Our money is completely being flushed down the toilet. And for this lady, one of the places where her money seems to get completely flushed down the toilet might specifically be in the realm of her family, but it also might specifically be in the realm of her household. She might just find herself spending a lot of money on her house all the time. And every time she looks, something else is broken or something else is wrong, and she needs to go around and attend to it one more time. And the house can be such a major drain on her pocket. Maybe the house had a major flooding. Maybe she lived close to water. Maybe the house had a mold infestation. And she found that as a result of this molding or this flooding or this watery warfare against the foundation of her home, it's been difficult for her to really establish a real sense of wealth through her home within this lifetime, because the home continues to be a toilet bowl on her personal assets. So that is what we can say about the money. Now, the students at Oraculos have this tendency, which I dare say is even a bit of an annoying tendency, but they have a tendency of always wanting me to talk about the triplicity rulers of the second house. Even when I say to them, this isn't something that I actually do in the real world, in my real astrological practice, they always ask me about these damn triplicity rulers of the second house, and I don't know why. But we're going to do it so that you can know how to do it. So, the second house has Virgo on the cusp of that house. The triplicity rulers of this house are going to be determined based on the sect of the chart. This is a nighttime chart, which means that the triplicity rulers of the second house are going to be the Moon, Venus, and Mars. These are the three triplicity rulers of this second house, because the Moon rules the earthy triplicity in the nighttime, followed by Venus, followed by Mars. So the moon is going to represent this woman's monetary life in the first stages of her life. Venus is going to represent her monetary life in the second stage of her life, possibly when she moved out of her parents' home. And then Mars is going to represent the monetary stability of her life in the last stage of her life. The moon is at 22 degrees of, what is that, of Aries, 40 minutes. The first thing I see about that moon is that that moon is in a quincunx with a Neptune, which means that someone might have been drinking away the wealth of the family. Someone might have been alcoholizing the wealth of the family, but it does not seem as if there was a reliable source of family wealth at the beginning portion of this lady's life, or just a reliable sense of personal wealth at the beginning portion of this lady's life, because it seems as if as the money is trying to be brought in, something is washing it away at the same time. And usually when it's Neptune, it tends to be something that could be alcoholic or drug related or addiction related. So that's the moon Neptune. But I also see the moon in the quincunx with the Uranus, which is also further announcing to us this theme of financial instability within the earliest years of this native. And as a result of that, her early years may not have laid a foundation for her to truly understand what wealth or what financial acumen actually is or was. So that is our moon representing the wealth within the first stage of her life. And by stages, I usually divide them into 30 years, not because anyone said that that's what you should do, but just because it seems like if a life tends towards 90 years, then the 30 years for the first stage of my life makes sense. So moving on to the second stage of her life, she has the Venus ruling the money in the second stage of her life. The Venus is in the sign of its detriment, which could be indicating that the money in the second stage of her life really wasn't that strong either. We also see this Venus in a square relationship with the Jupiter, and the Venus square the Jupiter could also be a further indication to us that not only was the money not strong, but the money that she did have, she may have tended towards spending it or splurging it, or not necessarily having the greatest sense of financial sobriety with that money within the second stage of her life, as a result of the Venus representing the money in the second stage of her life being in a square relationship with Jupiter, which represents a sense of extravagance. And even if it's not extravagant to the point of you buying Rolls Royces every other month, it could still be extravagant for your own lifestyle and for the means within which you live, basically. So that's the Venus-Jupiter representing the money in the second stage of her life. One of the things that we would tell her to try to cull or curb within the second stage of her life, which is basically kind of where she is right now, she's coming to the end of that second stage, is the tendency towards overspending, because she already is aware of the ways in which the overspending has not been in service to her previously. And finally, the money in the last stage of her life is represented by this Mars. Now, this Mars is the best of all of these planets as far as representing her money is concerned. And I dare say that this is the money that she needs to lean into the most, the Mars, at 9 degrees Virgo, 17 minutes. So she's learned all of her financially challenging things to learn in this lifetime. There's no more financial challenges for her to learn about. Now she needs to focus on this last stage of her life as being a stage in which she creates a real sense of financial stability and financial self-control. Now, even while I say that, we see that the Mars is in an opposition relationship to the part of fortune. The part of fortune, which we know is a secondary proxy for our money within this lifetime. The part of fortune is also in a quincunx with that Jupiter, which once again announces this tendency towards an overspending or a living beyond one's means. And Mars, opposite the part of fortune, can also be an indication of burning through one's wealth. So, the native is a hard-working person. We want her to continue to work hard, but we also want her to create a sense of financial sobriety surrounding the sort of things she's doing with her monies within this lifetime. And that is how I would interpret this chart from the perspective of the second house and its ruler. Now we would go on to the third house, because the way how you read the chart is from the first house to the 12th house. That is just kind of what we do. And I don't really spend as much time on all the houses, but we'll go on to the third house. In the third house, we see that she has herself there as the sun, with the sibling there as well, with the south node. So oftentimes, when the south node is in the house, it can represent that that is going to be an area of our greatest learning within this lifetime. So here we have the South Node present within the third house, and the South Node present within the third house could represent that something about her relationship with her sibling could have been an area of great karmic challenge, but it could also have been an area of great karmic heavy lifting within this lifetime. Maybe, who knows what the case with the sibling might have been. The sibling could have been unwell, or the sibling could have had some issues that once again caused the native to be the one who took on the burden of really supporting and taking care of that sibling. So that's one of the things that we see when we have the South Node present within the third house. There are also people who say that just simply having the South Node in the Scorpio could point towards a potentially financially challenging topic, but I'm not really one of those people. So there's that. Now, on this topic of the siblings, we see that the sibling is also in a square relationship with Jupiter. Now, what does Jupiter represent in this chart as far as this lady is concerned? If this is the sibling's first house, this is the sibling's second house, this is the sibling's third house. So the Venus square the Jupiter could indicate that the sibling with the other sibling, not necessarily with her, but maybe if there is another sibling within the life of this sibling, they could be in a state of warfare or in a state of contention, because that's one of the things that we would see when I have the ruler of my third house square the ruler of its own third house. My siblings may not necessarily get along, and that might be a very big part of what is challenging within the family unit. So now we're going to move on from that, and we're going to move around to the ruler of the fourth house, which is the Mars. Mars is rising within this chart. Usually when a person has Mars rising, usually when a person has the ruler of their fourth house rising within their chart, they look more like their father. Now, the reason why I'm a bit confused by this is because she also has the ruler of the 10th house in a conjunction with her. And the ruler of the 10th house is the mother, which should say that she should take more after the mother than she does the father. However, I've never said that before in all my years of astrological practice, and I do know that this whole father piece with the ruler of the fourth house rising tends to be accurate more often than not. So having the ruler of the fourth house rising could indicate that the native looks a lot like her father and possibly looks more like her father than she does her mother, and that might be one of the things that we see within her life. Now we have the ruler of the father in opposition to the part of fortune, which once again might be saying that there could be something within my parental lineage that isn't stabilizing in my mind as far as money is concerned. The money story could be a very challenging thing, and it's something that I probably learned from my dad, this idea of financial insobriety, perhaps. Now, whenever we speak about the father within the chart of a woman, I always look at the sun as well, because the sun is a great index for who the father is within anybody's chart. And here she has the sun in a square relationship with Jupiter. Now, Sun-Jupiter is a wonderful combination because it represents the happy, the jovial, the loving, the kind man, the man who goes out of his way to make everybody feel happy and jovial and supported and loved and cared for, the man with a big personality and a hearty laugh, the man who knows how to stand in a place of support for me and for others. So that could also be a story that's manifesting within her life regarding her father, regardless of whatever other quote-unquote disappointments there might be within the family itself. Her understanding of her father as a man within her life specifically could be that the father represents the very happy, jovial, forthright, outgoing, loving, optimistic sort of person. Now, when we talk about the father, we also have to speak about the mother. What I do is I do not use the planets in the 10th house to talk about the mother, but I use the ruler of the 10th house to talk about the mother. And within this chart, the ruler of her 10th house is the Venus at 1 degree Scorpio. And she has the Venus in a square relationship with the Jupiter. And Jupiter within this chart is representing the wealth of the family. That's Venus square Jupiter. So this could indicate that the mother probably was a major antagonistic force within the family's overall wealth and the family's overall financial stability. If there were somebody to create a sense of financial instability within the family, that might have come more from the mother than from anywhere else. Now, Venus-Jupiter could also indicate that the mother as well was somebody who was optimistic in her own right and was also somebody who would overextend herself in her own right. So we see this tendency manifesting not only through the native's father, but also through the native's mother. And that sense of overextending oneself is something that she herself, the native, may have inherited within this lifetime in general. Now, to get more insight into the mother, I go to the moon. And I see the moon is in a quincunx relationship with the Neptune. I know that moon Neptune is one of the combinations that we have for a weak digestive system, or a digestive system that's just allergic to everything. So one of the things I might tell the native is to be mindful of her own tendency to be allergic to everything from a food perspective, because moon Neptune is one of the combinations that we have for lots of food-based allergies. But moon Neptune in this context could indicate that the mother was unwell, the mother wasn't able to be very supportive, the mother wasn't there in any robust sort of way. The mother would have represented a major source of what felt unstable or unsafe or insecure within the larger family home. And then we see the moon Uranus. Moon Uranus can oftentimes be an indication that my mom really didn't really want to be a mom. And she didn't really come into this world with the softness necessary to mother, or to hold, or to nurture, or to care. She came into this world and she may have been thrusted into the role of motherhood. She may have found herself in the role of motherhood. And as a result of that, she did what she could do when she found herself there. But that may not have been her strong suit within this lifetime. And therefore, as I look towards the imprints of the feminine within my life, I also see this imprint of something that feels very, very erratic and potentially even volatile. So there could be this story also manifesting through the maternal link within the family as well. We have 2 minutes left. Now, the final thing that I'm going to say about this chart from the perspective of the family specifically, is that we see within this chart, she has the combination for the school teacher, but she also has this combination for a very real sense of early life shakeups and breakups. And that is the Saturn-Uranus. Saturn-Uranus is a combination that is understanding that relationships come and go, that people come and go, that nobody stays forever, that life just isn't built that way. And as a result of having the Saturn-Uranus, this might cause her to already in this lifetime be geared towards this understanding that divorce is a part of life, people separate, people don't stay together forever, and by extension of that, she might consciously partake in this sense of repetitive divorcing by being a school teacher, because that's what school teachers have to do. They repeatedly fall in love with these students who come into their classroom, and then they have to let them go, because that is just part and parcel of the nature of that work with the Saturn-Uranus. And it's a combination that we oftentimes see in the charts of people who do teach. The sense of growing someone up for 6 months in a semester or whatever, and then letting them go, and then bringing in another group of students and then falling in love with them and then letting them go. This piece of the conscious divorcing by doing that sort of work could be something that we find built within her, but also ultimately Saturn-Uranus as a combination is a combination that can leave us feeling as if the ground beneath our feet isn't really the most stable. And this can manifest within our romantic life, where we find ourselves attracting partners who also embody that sense of instability, but it could also manifest just within life in general. So what we see within this chart is a woman who has gone through many circumstances from a familial perspective, from a financial perspective, from a romantic perspective even, and all of those circumstances that she's gone through has essentially fortified her, or has essentially put her in a position to have to become a stronger, more resilient person within this lifetime. And very often when life puts us in a position to become a stronger, more resilient person, we find ourselves becoming a stronger, more resilient person. So while we see a chart that has many shifting pieces and a chart that has many things that might potentially feel uncomfortable earlier within the life of this native, who she's grown into as a result of all of these circumstances is somebody who is resilient, somebody who is compassionate, somebody who has the ability to understand the impermanence of life, And as a result of that, somebody who has the ability to roll with the punches in a way that is skillful and thoughtful and generous, essentially. So, interesting chart makes for an interesting life, but it also makes for a skillful and a more adept human being. So, that is it for this. I'm going to turn the floor over to the native. I know I spoke for a very long time. You could give us 5 minutes of feedback regarding how this landed.
Well, thank you so much. You nailed it. I feel like, and astrology has always made me feel that my life is unfolding exactly as it's supposed to. And the lessons I came to learn, wow, I chose some hard ones, but I am truly very resilient. And friends point that out all the time, that I've had the teeth knocked out of me when I was little. My mom was an Aries domineering mom and 4 master's degrees and always working full time and angry all the time. And I was scapegoated. And it's so interesting. My entire family, nobody wants to talk to me. And I'm very loving and I'm very present for them. And I reach out to them on their birthdays. They don't even know when my birthday is and don't even care. My brother is dying of colon cancer now, and I reach out to him a lot, but he seems completely indifferent toward me. And his wife hates me. And I'm like, why? I'm so good to these people, you know? And so I just think, well, it's all happening for a reason, and I'm just turn it over to God, you know. My mom was a spendaholic. She ruined all of our family's resources, and I'm taking care of her now. She's got dementia, and she's got more money now than she's ever had because I'm managing her finances. And um, I love real estate. I bought 13 homes. I've done okay with most of them. I've lost on a few, but I've never done great. But I've always been able to hold my own. I've had to be very independent from an early age. I'm always taking care of my parent, or my mom. Um, but I've done okay. I've done okay. I'm so grateful. I haven't flushed everything. I did have a flood in my house, oddly enough, and at least Culligan paid the bill for it. So they redid the entire floor, and I'm just thrilled out of my mind. I've been lucky with things. Um, I love chocolate. Oh my gosh. All my grandfathers loved chocolate. I'm surprised I'm not 300 pounds, but I've also been a massage therapist my whole life, and I think keeping that up has been really good. I work in education too, so kids are always coming and going, and so that's interesting. And I'm an administrator, though. I've always been too afraid to teach. I know that I have so much potential and dynamic, but I've always felt very shut down, and that Aries quincunxing everything is just been hard, but that's my goal. My 1111 wish is to be able to shine even brighter. Also, I got involved with the ground floor of a startup company when I was 30, early 30s, and we almost made millions. But then the NASDAQ crashed and that never materialized. So I've come close a few times, but it's interesting because in tech, there's just so many things you said that were just so incredibly accurate. And wow. And then I was in a relationship with a man, Capricorn, loved him, but then he ended up taking a bunch of money from me and then he died. And how it's just like there's always this coming and going. And I think I've got so much to offer, but like, why doesn't anybody respond to me? You know, like, and is it ever going to come? You know, love. I trust it will, but uh, yeah. So oh, and then with all the chocolate, of course, I got pre-diabetes. But I've been managing it pretty good. And I lost my gallbladder. You know, all the oily foods. But I don't eat a lot of deep fried foods or anything. But I'm just very sensitive to them. I'm just trying to think of other things you said that I'm not hitting on. Um,
Well, let me ask you, and thank you so much for sharing this because as you share, we learn, and it's a wonderful experience for all of us. So one of the things I didn't hit on was the fact that you have the ruler of your children, which would be the Jupiter over here in the 12th house. And one of the things that we find is that that sometimes can indicate fertility-based issues that prevent the children's story from happening harmoniously within this lifetime. So have the fertility-based issues been a problem for you within this lifetime as well?
Well, you know, it's so interesting. I've never been married and I've never had kids. So that's how it's manifested. I would have loved it, but I never met the first guy I fell in love with. It would have been perfect timing, ended up becoming a paranoid schizophrenic. And I mean, just like the weirdest things keep happening to these men that I think this might be it. And so I never had to deal with it. Um,
Mhm. Okay, interesting. Well, listen, if there's anything else that you would like to share, and I know that you have to go, and I know we've been here for a while, please feel free to do so. But if this feels good and solid for you, then thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
well, no, and thank you for such a incredible exposition of all of these things. It's just validated everything. But I do hope, and I've always lived within my means. I will tell you that because my mom's spendaholic. She was such a
Mm,
spendaholic. And I know that there was alcoholism in future previous generations and ancestry, but my parents didn't drink, and I don't drink. Although my brother's wife does, and that created a bunch of problems. So
mm.
I've never been a drinker, thank God. And I've never been a spendaholic because my mom was such a horrible warning to me about what can happen. And I'm happy with little, so it's okay. But I hope that in my last phase that I maintain my financial stability and that I come into love at some point too, because I love to love. I love to be in relationship, and it's just been so few and far between. Like everybody just kind of blows up real quick. I don't know how that happens.
Well, one thing I will say to you, and I know you have to leave, but one thing I will say is that with astrology and as an astrologer yourself, when we go through things once, it doesn't mean that we have to go through them again. And so you've had this pattern of meeting the people, meeting the Saturnian people who then end up making
Yeah, my
a
fiance was a Capricorn.
yeah. Who then make this quick departure, or who make this volatile or this sudden departure. You've already lived that story. You also have the combination of lover's bliss within your chart through the Venus and the Jupiter, because that's what that combination means, lover's bliss. So you have the ability to tap into that now if you haven't been able to tap into it before, and you don't have to relive that volatile love story anymore because you've already been through that. Now you can step into something else. So your chart has the promise of blissful love. It's
Yay!
just now for you to step into that in this next phase of your life.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Oh,
Thank
that
you
was
so
great.
much. Thank
Yeah,
you
it's
so
so
much.
talented. I'm so glad I found you.